All right, let's talk shopping. We all like to think we're pretty savvy, right? We hunt for deals. But what if I told you that the #1 rule of buying and selling, the one our entire economy is built on, is sometimes just flat out wrong? Let's get into it.
I mean, think about it. It sounds totally nuts, right? Why would anyone buy more of something when the price goes up? We're trained to look for sales, to snap up a bargain, but our own behavior can be, well, a lot weirder than we think. This single question turns economics completely on its head, and trust me, by the end of this, you're going to see the crazy psychology that makes it happen. Okay, so before we get to breaking the rules, we've got to understand the biggest rule of all. It's this core idea that's secretly running the show for almost every single thing you've ever bought. Seriously, from your morning coffee to that car you've been eyeing.
And that rule is the law of demand. It's super simple, it's intuitive, and it is pretty much the foundation of all modern economics. It was famously laid out by the economist Alfred Marshall way back in his 1890 book, Principles of Economics. And all it really says is this: when stuff gets cheaper, we buy more of it. When it gets more expensive, we buy less. Makes perfect sense, right? But why does it work that way?
So this isn't just some random guess people made. It's a law for a very good reason. Turns out, it's all about two powerful psychological forces that are pulling our strings every single time we pull out our wallets. Let's break them down.
All right, so there are two big ideas at play here. First, you've got the income effect. Just imagine the price of your favorite pizza suddenly drops. All of a sudden, you've got more cash in your pocket than you thought. You feel a little richer, right? So you can afford to buy more. Then there's the substitution effect. Let's say coffee gets cheaper. Suddenly, it looks way more appealing compared to tea. Even people who usually drink tea might think, hey, for that price, I'll have a coffee today. And just like that, demand for coffee goes up. These two things working together are basically the engine that makes the law of demand run.
Okay, got it? We've laid the groundwork. Price goes up, we buy less. Price goes down, we buy more. It's solid, it's logical, it's not always true. And this, my friends, is where things get really interesting. We're about to dive into the weird, fascinating, and totally real exceptions that flip this whole golden rule on its head.
You heard me right. Sometimes, for certain products, a higher price tag is actually what makes us want it more. Yeah, the psychology of why we buy things is about to get a whole lot weirder.
So, these rule breakers usually fall into three main buckets. You've got the stuff we buy just to show off. Then there's the stuff we buy because it feels like everyone else has it. And then the weirdest one of all, the absolute necessities that we're somehow forced to buy more of when the price shoots up. This first one brings us to something called Veblen goods. They're named after an economist, Thorstein Veblen. And we're talking about pure luxury items here. Think designer bags, fancy watches, supercars. The key thing to get is that their value isn't really about what they do, it's about what they cost. The ridiculously high price tag is the main feature. It's a signal. It screams, I'm successful. If that designer bag suddenly went on sale, the very people who buy it might not want it anymore. It loses its power as a status symbol.
Next up, we have the bandwagon effect. You've definitely seen this one. Why do we feel that urgent need for the latest phone, even when our current one works perfectly fine? A lot of the time, it's just because it seems like everybody else is getting one. Demand just explodes because a product gets popular. This has nothing to do with price or even how good the product is. It's all about that powerful, deep-seated desire to fit in.
And now for the most brain-twisting exception of them all, Giffen goods. Okay, this one is a genuine paradox, so stick with me. Picture a very poor family that lives mostly on a cheap staple food, let's say rice, and maybe a tiny bit of something more expensive like meat. Now what happens if the price of rice goes up? Well, their budget is so tight that they suddenly can't afford that little bit of meat anymore. So what do they have to do to survive? They have to take what little money they have left and buy the only thing they can still afford, which is more of the now more expensive rice. It's a tragic survival trap where a rising price for a basic food actually forces people to buy more of it.
Okay, let's just add one more layer here to really sharpen our understanding. You see, economists are really specific about this stuff, and it all boils down to one simple question. Did the price of the item change, or did something else in the world change? So when it's just the price changing, we call that a change in quantity demanded. This is the classic law of demand we started with. A store puts TVs on sale, the price drops, and boom, more people line up to buy one. It's a simple, predictable move along the same path caused only by the price tag.
But a shift in demand? Now that's a whole different animal. This is when, at the very same price, people suddenly want way more or way less of a product. So what could cause that? Well,
maybe a famous influencer posted about it, and now it's cool. Or maybe everyone in town got a raise. Or a new fashion trend just completely takes over. The entire rulebook has changed. That's a fundamental change in demand itself.
This chart kind of lays out the cold, hard math behind all this psychology. Now, just look at that Giffen row at the very bottom. See how the price effect is positive? That means price goes up and demand goes up. How is that possible? Well, it's because that super powerful negative income effect, that feeling of being suddenly much poorer because the staple food got more expensive, it completely steamrolls the normal substitution effect. It's like a mathematical trap, and that is the secret sauce behind the whole Giffen paradox.
So, where does all this leave us? What does it mean for you next time you're about to click Add to Cart? Well, it means that single decision is actually a huge battle going on inside your head, with all these invisible forces pulling you in different directions.
Yeah, this is a much more realistic picture of your shopping brain. You're not just a simple calculator crunching numbers. You're constantly juggling the price tag versus what your friends think. You're balancing what you actually need against what you want people to think of you. Your income versus that hot new trend. Every single time you buy something, it's a totally unique mix of all these competing signals.
And that really just leaves us with one final question to chew on. Now that you know about these hidden drivers, status, social pressure, even survival, are you ever going to look at your shopping cart or even your own decisions the same way again? The next time you buy something, what's really driving your demand?